I really couldn't think of much of an opening joke for this, so I just thought I'd bust out elf ears. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep those on this this whole time. Hey everybody! So, on a recommendation of one of my Patreon supporters on my Discord server, because yes, that is available as a reward for the Patreon. I got the plug in early. Ha! Link in the description. Somebody had mentioned that they watched The Dragon Prince on Netflix, and they recommended it to me, and I watched the first episode, and I was like, maybe. And then I ended up burning through the rest of it over the next couple days. So, yeah, I like it. I like it pretty well. A couple of bits of context before I get into this. I do know that it has some of the same creative team from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which, and I know I lose cred for this, I have not seen. I have been meaning to see it forever, but like it's hard for me to find the time at this, and it has been for a while. So it just keeps getting bumped down, and I end up doing other stuff before it. I will get around to it one of these days, I'm sure. But the main reason I bring that up is that it means I'm not going to compare it to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I'd hope is maybe a little bit refreshing, because at least most of the reviews that I've seen are all done by people who also saw Avatar, so they could not help but make those comparisons. Not that there's a problem with making those comparisons, but I don't have them to make. So, I'll go spoiler-free for as long as I can, as I tend to do. I'll give you a warning before I get into spoilers. So, the premise is actually not all that original. It's a pretty standard fantasy world setup. You have kingdoms of humans, you have a world of elves. They don't like each other. The elves hold a grudge against the humans. There's a backstory where there was a dragon king that the humans recently killed, and that really put them on the outs with the elves. Plus, the humans went an extra step and actually destroyed the dragon's egg, which means that there isn't another dragon to replace that. That's your titular dragon prince. That's, it's one thing for the humans to have killed the dragon king, but they slayed the unborn dragon prince, and that's really set everything off. I'm going into a bad place, but it's not a particularly unique world. You've got elves, you got humans. They don't like each other. Fantasy kingdoms, coming to a head. Pretty basic. What works is in the fine details. Specifically, I would say the main strength of this show so far are the characters, because they're great. They are a lot of fun. And the pacing. It's really well paced. I will make a comparison as far as the pacing specifically goes. The show that it reminded me of is the anime series Escaflowne, which is one of my favorite anime shows. And part of what I love about that is how well it's paced. It's really tough when you do a continuous story over a while to find ways to divert the characters from what it is they're doing, or have them get stalled, or have their goal shift without it feeling like continual stalling tactics. I mean, to make a video game comparison, it's the difference between having the quests sort of shift and change what it is they need to accomplish, but their core goal, and that might even change as it goes on. It's the difference between that and just having a singular goal that never changes and just loading them down with side quests. And it doesn't do that. It keeps it moving, and it keeps it flowing, and it's well paced in that way. The characters are great. The characters were initially what hooked me in, because, like I said, the first episode I was like, the characters. I'm liking these characters. So, some of the things I like about them. We've got our three primary characters. We have a couple of human princes named Callum and Ezran. Callum being a little bit older, kind of a young teen. You've got Ezran, who's, I don't know, he's maybe 9-ish, 8, 9, could be 7. I can't really tell with animated young characters how old they're supposed to be a lot of the time. But then you've also got an elf character, an elf assassin by the name of Raela. And those are your three primary characters. But those three, they're all good. Callum he's interesting because they managed to do the sort of awkward guy thing. Yeah, awkward young guy. He's, a little bit goofy. He's really kind of out of sorts without irritating me and without making me cringe, because awkwardness humor, embarrassment humor, which frequently comes out of that, I don't like cringing at that. Like, it makes me deeply uncomfortable. I really hate it, to be perfectly honest. But they managed to have an awkward character without dipping heavily into cringy humor, which I greatly appreciated. Ezran is just sweet. He's just a sweet kid. And yet doesn't come across as cloyingly sweet. He feels real. Like, having a young kid of my own, like, yeah. I mean, he's maybe a little more zen than many kids I know, but he's not that weird, pretentious, old beyond his years nonsense. And then Raela's just, how do we go there? Raela is just so frustrated with life. and she's a lot of fun, and she also gets a lot of the better action scenes. Now, these three characters, they're great. None of them are my favorite character, though. My favorite character is Bait. Bait is Ezran's pet. He is what's called a glow toad. He is a bulldog in lizard form, is what he is, which is why I love him so much. I used to have a bulldog a while back. I think they are the cutest things ever, and they, like, nobody can give you side eye like a bulldog can give you side eye. And I just, he's great. I know I'm not the only one who loves him, because from what I could tell, Hot Topic has already sold out of the plushies of this guy, and like the show's only been out for like a week as of my recording. So yeah, Bait's the best. So some of the other characters I particularly enjoyed. There's Viren, who is an advisor to the Human King, who's Harrow, and they have an interesting relationship. That's pretty good. I love Viren's kids, though. It's Claudia and Soren, and they are, you know what it is? They feel like they stepped out of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Because Soren is, he's this, I don't know if he actually is the captain of the guard, but he's that kind of role. And he's very into, how buff and in shape and muscular he is. And, he's doing, bends and lunges and like, you have my full attention. And then Claudia, who's a mage, is just, I don't even know how to describe Claudia. She is just she's maybe a slightly more focused Luna Lovegood in a way. Like she's got a little bit clearer thought process, but that a little bit of that randomness to a certain extent, and I really enjoy them quite a bit. Amaya is another highlight. Amaya is interesting because Amaya is deaf. And that is something that simply is. Like, there isn't extra attention drawn to it. She uses sign language to communicate. And when doing so with someone who doesn't know sign language, she has a translator who says it for her. And it's just there. It's just an element of the character. And she actually has a handful of scenes where she does sign language and, to someone who understands it. We don't get a translation on it. It just happens, and it feels nice and organic. It's actually a pretty dang diverse cast overall, and in a very unassuming fashion. So, like, the King Harrow, has dark skin, and as a result, Ezran, the younger prince, does as well. Callum, the older prince, does not, because he's actually the stepson and stepbrother, or I guess half-brother. Half-brother to Ezran, stepson of Harrow. But you've got those, and there are others as well. It's just nice that it is completely unremarked upon. That's what I really like and really enjoy about it as an element. It is remarkable for being unremarkable. Love it. I think I'm gonna need to start. No. I can talk about sort of my one major sticking point with it, and that's the animation itself. The designs are solid, but the animation gets choppy. It gets bad, honestly. So to use basically, there are times where you can tell there are frames missing, which is weird because with the technique that they're actually using to animate this, I don't think that's a natural occurrence. I think they almost have to do that on purpose. I don't know that for certain. But since this isn't hand-drawn animation, it feels all the weirder. Now, I'm used to a certain amount of animation fluidity not being consistent. So like an animated film that I love where that's very evident is The Last Unicorn. And The Last Unicorn has a number of scenes where you can tell they had fewer frames of animation for this. But then they have some scenes like the Red Bull chasing the unicorn where they brought it up to the highest level of fluidity, the most animation frames that they could afford to do. And it looks smoother, but so I can handle that. I can get used to that. But it was the degree of how jagged and stuttery the animation gets during slower, quieter, usually dialogue scenes compared to how smooth it is during more intense and action-oriented scenes. It's a big gap. It's not a minor thing to overlook. It's really noticeable, and it was jarring even up until the last episode of this first season. It was jarring. I stopped getting annoyed by it, but I never stopped noticing it whenever it happened. So, yeah, that's like, if anyone told me that they watched the first episode and they're like, it's hurting my eyes because it's not consistent, I get it. So, be aware of that. But I think I'm going to have to get into spoilers a little bit more for anything else that I'm going to talk about. And also to get to some of my more nitpicky issues. But I really like this. It goes quick. It's only 9 episodes. There are like 25 minutes a pop. If you've got an empty day, you can burn through this in one sitting, really. So I do recommend it if you like adventurous, entertaining, fun, often lighthearted, but with a sense of weight and stakes storytelling and animation. Yeah, go for it. So, getting into spoilers now. Some of the direction some of the characters went in was disappointing. And mainly I'm thinking about Viren for that. Because what I liked is once I realized I had my first inkling in maybe episode 2, and by episode 3 I'm like, yeah, definitely. Viren was going to become the functional antagonist of the story. And what I liked initially was that there was a sense of depth to him. And, you had his interactions with the king where he felt hurt at the fact that the king was doubting him and questioning his motives and all these other things. But then once he kind of gets control, he became much more generic, evil vizier style villain. And I found that really disappointing. And on a personal level, it kind of irritates me that he kept basically referring to himself as a pragmatist. And I'll just touch on this quickly. That annoys me because I feel like whenever a character is described as a pragmatist in entertainment, that's always as a negative, or they are in some way not a good person. They're a villain, they're an antagonist. And as someone who prides himself on being pragmatic, but not being pragmatic without, humanity and empathy, at least I try to maintain that as well, seeing that this is like great. Is that what people think pragmatists are? Because, for God's sakes, this guy's just a dick. And he's not a pragmatist either. He's doing things that are way, way more trouble than they're worth. He's a selfish prick who calls himself a pragmatist to justify what he's doing. Ugh. Yeah, so, I mean, there's room to add more depth to him, but I feel like he he was the one character who became shallower as the series went on. So that was disappointing. But I really did like that, again, with his kids, with Claudia and with Soren, when it became clear that they were going to factor in as antagonists, that they didn't lose their depth. And, well, I mean, I say depth. Soren's kind of shallow by design, but like in a fun way. So, like, I liked that was maintained. I like in general that, aside from Viren, who, like I said, kind of goes off the deep end a little bit, I like that you can't tell upon first encountering a character whether or not he's going to be an ally to our protagonist or a hindrance. So, like, take, for example, the guy fighting in the square who had the sun dagger thing. That was totally the kind of introduction you'd expect from somebody who would tag along with them, or at least for a little bit help them out. And he just wasn't that. You know, so his how he panned out, it wasn't so much, it wasn't to the degree that I call it a subversion, but you can't call characters immediately. And even if you get a sense of, well, they'd normally be an ally, but they may not be in this situation because of the circumstances, and people like Amaya fall into that. So I like not being able to know right off the bat immediately, good guy, bad guy. And that's part of my disappointment with Viren, because I feel like he's the only one who sharply fell into a camp on that. Everyone else are just they're people. They're people with flaws and motivations, and they're clashing. And Viren, I got to get off that topic. I'm trying to think if there was anything else of a particular note. Oh, the tail end, the last couple of episodes didn't hold my interest quite as well, but I think it was because I really enjoyed these characters in the civilized world. I liked these characters interacting with each other, and by the last couple of episodes, I felt like we just had really isolated pockets. You had Soren and Claudia, you know, off on their thing to do the spell. You had the main group trying to get up this mountain. You had Viren sending Amaya off. Like, everybody felt very isolated, and I sort of lost the connections between them, which was a big part of what I had enjoyed previously, was seeing how those connections got strained and how it caused characters to do what they did when the pressure was put on, and, you know, these relationships really got tested. But when they became as sort of isolated as they were by then, it wasn't quite as engaging. Still solid, and it ends on a good note. I'll be really curious to see the next season. Oh, one other thing. Totally gonna call this right now, the Kings and the Bird. Like, I'm not the only one who's like, well, duh. Like, I didn't figure that out immediately but I knew when Viren came out of there after his whole confrontation with the king, I'm like, okay, something's up. I just got to figure out what it is. The Kings and the Bird. That's what's going on. I think I will wrap it up there. Yeah. It was a good job, and I know I had nitpicks and I had things that I complained about, but, you know, I complain out of love. I mean, I really do. I can enjoy the heck out of something, but I'm not going to call it perfect if it's not. And there are little things here and there. But I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. The characters are terrific. I really love spending time with these characters, and I look forward to getting able to do more of that down the line. And I'm also going to keep an eye out for when Bait plushies go back on sale, because, oh my god, he's so freaking cute. That'll wrap it up, folks. The Dragon Prince, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Oh, let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. There's buttons and there's links. I already plugged the Patreon, so I won't do it again. Although, by mentioning it, didn't I kind of do it again? Forget it. In any case, folks, you are the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.